Because it's not.
Okay, we're gonna.
If it's man and woman, it just sounds like two.
Okay, on a scale of 1 to 10, we're gonna be quiet. Shush. Quiet. All right, so you kind of need to understand, right? When you study a language, can you separate that language from the culture of the people who spoke it?
Yes.
Of course not. I don't think so.
Not really, right? Because that plays a huge part into the words that they need, right? The words that they use, right? If the Romans didn't have a stool, they wouldn't have a word for it. If the Romans didn't see water ever, if they lived inland, they wouldn't have words for the ocean or the color blue, which actually they don't have a word for. Well, actually, I'm sorry, it's the Greeks. It's the Greeks. They call it the wine dark sea, which is like not blue, which is kind of weird, but right. So culture, like where you are geographically, it does play a part into language development. Okay, but let's talk about who the Romans were, where they come from. Some of you who have taken humanities might find this to just be review, but it is fun anyway. What's humanities?
Well, Timothy doesn't know.
Okay, so let's take a talk. Let's take a talk. That's not English. All right, so take a moment here. Just take in this picture. Take in this image. Don't say anything. Take in the image, but don't react. Shh. Be quiet. Be quiet. Be quiet. Okay. What are some things that we notice here? What are some things that we notice? Clinton, what do you see?
There's a big old horse.
There's a big old horse being dragged by some people. Okay, where is it being dragged right now? What does it kind of look like is going on? Tim Luo.
It's going into Troy.
It's going into Troy, yes. How did you know that it was Troy?
I learned it in here.
Oh, because you learned it in humanities, not because it wasn't in the caption? Fair enough, fair enough. Okay. Claire, what are you noticing?
There are people in the horse.
There are people in the horse? How do you... How do you...
Well,
do you see them? Do you see them in the picture, though?
But it's very big, so...
Okay, so here's the deal. Here's the deal. All right, Claire knows the story. Tim knows the story.
I know the story. I know the story.
Okay, so we know part of this, or at least some of it. We know that we, as the readers, know that there are soldiers in that horse.
Yes.
We do, but do the people dragging it into the city know?
No, don't do it.
No.
Don't
Okay.
do it.
All right, so this painting, guys, I can make you do Latin grammar, and I do have a quiz printed out just in case you annoy me today. I always have one in my pocket.
You seem so creepy.
I seem so creepy?
Like, I have a question.
Okay. All right. This is one of the biggest conflicts in human history. This is one of the biggest stories of our time. Okay, this is the story of the Trojan War. Who's heard this story before? Okay, now, hands down. All right, the Trojan War is between which two parties? Who is it?
The Trojans and
The Trojans and the... And Greece, yeah. Yeah, it's Greece versus Troy. It's the Greeks versus the Trojans. Okay?
because of one person.
And we're going to talk about that.
Yeah.
Okay, so here's the thing. Back in the day, everybody knew this story, right? Everybody knew what they call the epic cycle, the Trojan cycle. Everything that had to do with everything was in this story. Everybody knew the characters, the references, like the little details of this story. And it kind of disseminates throughout all of the fabric of Greek and Roman mythology. Everything plays into itself. Okay, it's like this massive web of stories and characters and curses and things like that. It's crazy. And gods and goddesses, you can't step away from that, of course. All right, so let's talk about the backstory. All right, let's take a look.
Discord.
No, not...
Discord.
All right.
I know.
Take a look at this painting. Take a look at this painting. See if you can recognize either what's going on or who these characters might be. Okay. And it's a little dark, so sorry about that, but try your best. Okay. Now something I do want to mention here is the idea of iconography. Iconography. What is iconography? Does anyone know?
What's that? I'm sorry.
Okay, so in art history terms, right, iconography is the practice of using specific details to recognize a character in a painting, right? So for example, up here, we see a little staff with two snakes intertwined. That's not Apollo. No,
That's
no.
Mercury.
That's Mercury or Hermes in the Greek.
Hermes.
Okay, another one. All right, this is a lady. She usually is wearing a helmet. She's usually got some kind of breastplate. That's Athena or Minerva. Okay. Now, usually, for whatever reason, she's got beautiful golden hair, but what's kind of more telling is this little baby with wings.
Aphrodite.
That's Aphrodite or Venus in the Latin.
Venus.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, over here, who might this be?
Hera.
Probably Hera, right? Because she's sitting next to a very bearded, manly-looking man. Okay, so that's probably Hera or Juno and Zeus or Jupiter in the Greek or Latin. Jupiter.
I mean, like what you said, like Hera's Roman name.
Juno. Juno is Hera's Roman name.
I thought you said Terminal.
No.
What other name is that?
Nope. Okay, there's one more back here. Can you recognize her? Who is she?
The goddess of discord.
Demeter? I'm guessing.
Is it
Artemis?
Who said Artemis?
Diana.
That's Artemis, right? Because of the diadem, the little moon, the
Oh, I
crescent
said
moon
Diana.
shape on her crown. Okay, now it's very clear, right? This painting is from 1633, all right, during the Baroque period. It is very apparent that the people during this time were very well aware of the stories, the characters, and the details within which, right? So they're going to use all that information and pre-program it into their paintings. Now, right here is a golden apple. Okay. Now, who throws that golden apple into the wedding party? Let's say. Arwen, who is it? The discord person. Okay, her name is Eris.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, she's the goddess of discord.
The Discord mod.
She's salty. Okay, so here's the deal. There's a little bit of backstory even to this. There's backstory even to shush. Alright, guys, I like talking about this, but when you guys are talking, I can't talk. And I'm just not going to teach. I'll just make you do grammar. Because we can. I'm fine with that too. Okay, so there are two people here. Okay, Peleus and Thetis. Do you recognize those names?
Who's that?
I just remember Peleus.
Okay, so Thetis is like a sea nymph type character, and Peleus just wants to marry her. So it is the wedding of Peleus and Thetis. They invite all the gods and goddesses in the kingdom to celebrate this wonderful occasion. Eventually, they will be the parents of Achilles, by the way.
Yes.
Okay, but they forget to invite Eris, the goddess of discord, because who wants discord at a wedding? Nobody. So what does Eris do? She does what Eris does best. She gets a golden apple, inscribes it with Callisti, meaning to the fairest, and throws it into the party. And who seems to pick it up and think, oh, I'm the fairest?
Aphrodite.
Aphrodite is
Athena
one.
And Hera.
Okay, Aphrodite, Athena, and Hera. Let me write their names down so you can see what they're spelled like.
And then isn't Zeus the judge?
Okay.
Slave.
Yeah.
I want to ask this true, but I mean like first in one edition it says that like this was never about who's the most beautiful.
Who said that?
Like this was only the golden apple was only it only signifies something because before this like Aphrodite versus Athena and Hera they already have beef.
Well, I mean, all the gods and goddesses typically kind of have beef with each
Aphrodite
other.
and Hera, they have lots of beef. And so like this is So it's like, this is some sick way of Aphrodite standing up here.
Maybe. I mean, the gods and goddesses are a little interesting. They have a lot of backstories going on. And that's one of the things that people are aware of at that time as well, right? Because there are understood mythologies. Question?
Can I explain what happened?
Hold tight. Question?
Wait, who was actually holding that apple? I can't really see.
The what?
Who was actually holding that apple?
Eris.
Who is actually holding the apple?
I can't see.
Zeus.
Yeah, it looks like Zeus has got it and Mercury's got his hand on it. Okay, now, let's keep going. Okay, now Zeus, being a smart guy, right? We've got this contest of 3 beautiful goddesses. We've got Athena, we've got Aphrodite, and we've got Hera, right? So they all come to Zeus and they say, hey dude, this apple says to the fairest, can you judge it? But Zeus is smart. He knows that no matter what, he's going to either insult his wife or his daughter or his
No.
Associate.
other family member who's somewhat related, but it's also kind of weird how she comes to be, right?
Out of this.
So he goes and he finds this guy over here, okay, and you can tell that he is a Trojan because of the hat that he's wearing on his head. All right, that is very particular. It's very Eastern looking, at least to the Greek eye. Okay, this is called the Judgment of Paris. Paris is the name of that Trojan prince. Okay, now each of these goddesses promises something. She says, they all say, Paris, if you pick me, I will give you X. I will give you something. Right? Who does he eventually pick, though? Who does he pick?
Athena.
No.
Oh, no, Hera.
Aphrodite.
He picks Aphrodite or
Yes.
Venus, right? Because Aphrodite/Venus promised him the most beautiful woman in the world.
And that was.
Okay, and who is that? Do we know her name?
Helen.
And she was.
Helen.
the princess.
They call her Helen of Troy, but she's not actually from Troy. Does anyone know where she actually is from? Yeah? She's from Sparta. And is she married?
Yeah.
You betcha she's married.
Married to
Okay. Now, here's the backstory. Okay. Troy is rich. Greece, also kind of rich. 2 kingdoms separate. There is a diplomatic mission that is sent to Sparta. The Trojans go. Paris goes with them. All right. He catches sight of Helen. Different stories say different things. Some say that she came willingly. Some say that she was taken against her will. Others say that just a ghost of her was sent by the gods. All right, but no matter what, some version of Helen ends up going back to Troy, having been stolen by Paris. Okay, now, Menelaus is the name of the king of Sparta. Okay, but he's got a very powerful brother. Right, so if someone comes and takes your wife, you think you're going to be happy about that?
Of course.
Is that playing into hospitality? Is that a good thing to do to your host?
Of course not.
No, it is not, right, Dora? Yes. Okay. Do you need to stand up? Do you need to stand up? No? Okay. All right, so Menelaus has a brother. Okay. His name is Agamemnon of Mycenae. Okay, now Agamemnon is the big, Greek, I guess you can call him like the Basileus, like the overlord of all the Greek city-states. He's like one of the more powerful ones, right? So Menelaus is like, yo, bro, this guy took my wife. Let's do something about it, right? Now what we have here on the screen, it's called the Mask of Agamemnon. It was found in Mycenae proper, right, which is shown here in this picture. All right, it was found in 1876 by a guy named Heinrich Schliemann. Can you guys say Heinrich Schliemann?
Heinrich Schliemann.
All right, where do we think he's from? Germany, good, yes. So Heinrich Schliemann was actually a banker and a businessman, right? He was not an archaeologist, but he so very much loved the stories of Troy and the stories of the Greeks and the Romans as a kid that eventually he started funding expeditions, archaeological expeditions, to go find these things, right? So he goes and he finds Mycenae in 1876. Here's the problem, though. He's finding these archaeological sites, but he's not doing the appropriate paperwork along with kind of documenting how things are found, where they're found, like, and that information, do you think that's important for like figuring out?
Very.
It's very important, right? So some of that information got lost. So yes, he kind of did bring all of this stuff into the public eye, which is good, but it also kind of started to make people realize like, oh, maybe we should kind of standardize archaeological procedure so that we don't lose this information again. Okay?
Miss Slade,
Yeah.
was Agamemnon, was he, was he his brother?
He is his brother. Yeah. So here's the fun. Let's actually talk about that. Okay. So we've got two. Whoops. Sorry, because this stuff goes super deep. Okay, so we've got Agamemnon on one side and we've got Menelaus on the other. Okay. Menelaus' wife is Helen. Does anyone know who Agamemnon's wife is?
Mask. That one guy.
Oh, apparently it thought I was talking to it. I'm not talking to. Okay. Clytemnestra. Clytemnestra. Okay, say it with me. Clytemnestra. Clytemnestra. Agamemnon. Menelaus. Helen. Paris. Pee pee poo poo man. Okay, great. Thank you. I'm glad you guys are up. Okay, now what's interesting about this is that Helen and Clytemnestra are partially related, right? So they're sisters, sort of, and Agamemnon and Menelaus are also brothers, right? So you've got two sets of siblings marrying each other. What's interesting about this is eventually Clytemnestra goes and kills Agamemnon. We'll talk about that another day because that is so interesting. Okay, this sets into a whole chain of events, a bunch of legal proceedings and all that fun stuff and curses. They both belong to Agamemnon and Menelaus, the cursed house of Atreus. Okay, we'll talk about that later. Right, but it is a cursed house nevertheless. So bad things are going to happen to these brothers, kind of. All right, but anyway, back to our regular story. Unless I guess we have questions.
What was the part about Atreus?
Atreus? Atreus was an ancestor of Agamemnon and Menelaus, and he did something against the gods which caused their household and their lineage to be cursed, right? And they belong to that long tradition of the cursed family. And we'll talk about them later. Okay, question, then question. Yeah. You know how to put it on? Yeah, look at you. First. Question.
I was just gonna ask, are we gonna do more history classes like this? This is nice.
I'd like to bring more, because this is the stuff that got me into it. This is the stuff that I found super interesting and
Yeah,
fun.
me too. I really
Right,
like
and
it.
it is related, and it's important. Okay, Jason.
So Zeus is chosen by the three goddesses to judge them, right? But then why does he go to Paris again?
So because, like, let's say you have like 3 siblings,
Yeah.
okay, and you all want the one toy. And so you go to mom and you say, hey mom, you're gonna have to give this toy to one of the, like, to the coolest kid.
Oh, so
Right,
it's
so
like
you-
favoritism.
It's favoritism. So he's
can't
smart
do
and he wants to avoid it because Zeus kind of knows how to play women a little bit. And he picks maybe a lot, actually. Yeah, that was a kind of an understatement. Right. So he makes Paris do it. Now Paris, do I have another picture of him? I don't. But let's talk about this painted vase for a moment. Okay, if you notice, right, we can recognize based on iconography, right, that's a good big buzzword, iconography, okay? This is definitely Athena. You can tell because she's wearing a mantle or like a little breast armor plate, at least to the Greek painting form, with little snakes on it. There's a backstory to that as well, but we won't get into it just now. All right, so that's Athena. Now the question is which one's which. I think,
Has minimal clothing on.
yeah, I'd say that this one is probably, I'd say that one's Aphrodite in the back, and the one in the front is Juno, that's my best guess because she's carrying a staff and she is technically the queen of the heavens.
Well, and what did they each offer?
I think,
Yeah, she's holding a heart.
no, that's the apple.
Oh,
That's the apple.
Athena offered
Look, it
I think
looks like a
she
heart.
offered like military strategy and success in war.
Sorry, it looks like a heart.
Juno offered power, Hera offered power, and Aphrodite offered the most beautiful woman in the world.
what type of power?
Just like world domination power. Yeah, so what do you want? Do you want power? Do you want military strategy? Or do you want like a hot wife? And Paris, being a basic guy, was like, I think I want the hot wife, so I'm going to do that. Now, one thing I just want to point out, Paris is technically a Trojan prince. He's a Trojan prince. Now, those of you who read the Aeneid will know that Juno is harboring hatred for the Trojans. This is one of the reasons why. Now, Paris also is usually shown kind of sitting out in nature. If you see, he's like leaning up against this rock over here. And he's carrying with him a lyre, right? So he's like kind of being a shepherd out in the field, just chilling and minding his own sheep, which you see over here. But then the goddesses come to bother him with this vanity contest, or this petty nonsense. Okay. Yes, Tim.
What will happen if Paris was like, go to that boy will help.
Then we wouldn't have as much of a story, would we? Okay, right? When we watch movies, my dad will always say, like, I say, what? Oh, why would you do that? And my dad goes, because it's in the script. It needs to be in the script.
I see.
Mm-hmm.
What if people just kept handing off the apple and avoiding?
I don't know. But this is classics. We don't deal with hypotheticals. Now, so we've got Agamemnon and we've got Menelaus, two big Greek leaders. Okay. Now they're trying to get support to go fight this war. We want to go against the Trojans because they slighted us. They took one of our women. So now we got to go fight. We got to go get her back. We got to go fight. Okay. Now, based on iconography, there's that word again. Iconography and the knowledge of stories. Who do we have in this picture? Any guesses? Any ideas? Any ideas? Robert, what do you think?
Got the brother of the masked man, the brother of Agamemnon.
Menelaus?
Yeah, but is he in this picture?
No, it is actually not Menelaus.
Oh.
Who's a particularly good archer who lays waste to some suitors when they come a-knocking and asking for his wife's hand in marriage? This is Odysseus, yeah. Okay, the scene where he kind of takes out all the suitors in the very end of the great epic work, Jason.
The Odyssey.
Yeah.
Good morning. It's the Odyssey, okay? Now,
So for this, can we write that Odysseus just killed a bunch of guys?
well, so for this you can say that, like Menelaus, so the Greek army that's being amassed right now, we've got Agamemnon, Menelaus, eventually they recruit Odysseus. Who else are they going to recruit? Who else are they recruiting? He's got a little heel problem. Achilles, okay? Those are just like the four main guys that we might talk about. There are... Okay, question.
What's all the mask of Agamemnon? What's the context of that?
So that was found in a grave site. They call it Grave Circle A, and it was a funerary mask that was like hammered out in solid gold. Right, so they found that mask, and they also found like women buried with like beautiful jewelry, and there were photos of Heinrich Schliemann's wife wearing the jewelry of Mycenae. Yeah, so that's like also a big no-no. You're not supposed to do that in archaeology. Kind of not so great. You need to save that information. Yes?
What is iconography?
Iconography, it's the, so like in the word, like icon, right? You use the word icon, something that you recognize because it's well-known, famous, distinguished. So iconography is just like the study of, or like the recognition of figures and things based on famous attributes, right? So like we'll recognize Zeus because he's carrying a lightning bolt. We recognize Poseidon because he's got a trident. You can recognize Athena because she's usually like fully decked out and ready to go fight. Okay, so we've got icons, right? Iconography kind of thing. Okay, So we got a bunch of Greeks and they're going off to war. Now, let's talk about it for a second. We've got our Greek area over here. I don't know if you guys can kind of see that. I'm just coloring it in.
Yeah, I can see.
Okay, it's like over here. They're going over to Asia Minor. That's what we call that, right? That's where Troy is. Okay? Does Troy make it out of this conflict alive?
No.
No. Who wins this battle? Greece. How many years does it take?
A long time.
10. It takes 10 stinking years for this war to finish.
Just for a woman.
10. All because of one woman. They call her the face that launched 1,000 ships.
Sorry, but like.
I guess she was pretty beautiful. I don't
What
know.
happened to Helen in the end?
I mean, to
So
be
eventually,
fair, she said that she was the most beautiful woman because
so when Troy falls, there are women left alive, and you'll see them in stories following the aftermath. Some of them absolutely were slaughtered, but others were taken back to the Greek lands kind of as like
As a six,
side pieces.
trophy.
As a trophy, as a spoil of war. That's what we call that, a spoil of war.
How sick.
How sick? What'd you say?
how sick.
It's the realities of war. That's how things were.
Well, yeah, you can't really change the past.
Nope, so we just have to learn from it.
Sure.
Okay, now,
Probably is.
right, so I know this is a little blurry, but over in Asia Minor, there is someone who survives the Trojan War, a man particularly, who has an epic written about him. What is his name, everyone? Aeneas. Okay, now, Aeneas is charged with going from Troy, having been razed to the ground, raised with a Z, not an S, just so you know. And he goes all the way around. He's got to make it to Italy, right? But that doesn't really look like a straight shot to me. This looks like a pretty shoddy sailing course, don't you think?
Yes.
Right, he ends up in Thrace. He goes all the way down to Crete. He's heading over to Sicily. He makes it to Carthage at some point, right? Really not the best. Okay? But eventually Aeneas, right, who is of Trojan stock, he is a Trojan dude. He founds what peoples? The Romans. Okay. Why do you think it's particularly interesting or important that the Romans come from Trojan stock?
Why?
I'm asking. Do you think that that's important?
They do not like Greece.
Well, eventually, if we look at the Imperium Romanum, right, the Roman Empire, eventually Roman rule does take over Greece, right?
Yeah.
Greece becomes part of the Roman Empire. So does Troy, for that matter, right? And parts of Egypt, Spain, France, a little bit of Britannia, okay? A little bit of the countries up in here, like Germany and stuff like that, okay? But there is that long-standing tradition, that Greek story that everybody knows so well, the Trojan War. It's so famous. So to tie the Roman peoples to the conflict of Troy, do you think that that's important?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you think that's propaganda?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. I know technically I'm not supposed to give you guys homework, but if I gave you something to read in English over the weekend, would you be interested?
Yeah. I guess.
Okay. So I'm going to stop this recording.